So sometimes you calibrate nice and then you can't strike in your pipes anymore. Therefore, have you calibrated successfully? No, not really.
No.
Right. And maybe you need to fix your strike in technique, which we'll talk about a little bit today.
Hmm.
But like, if you cannot strike in and the drones actually turn on, then your calibration was not successful. I think this is something that people misunderstand. They become too idealistic about the theory of calibration,
Mm.
and then we miss the forest for the trees in terms of the reality of it. We need maximum efficiency, really, is what we need out of
Hmm.
our drone reads. Morning, Jim.
Morning, Andrew Douglas. How are you, sir?
Good. Your shirt makes me want to ask, have they fixed Bandcamp yet?
I'm only more enthusiastic about Bandcamp all the time.
You can
When
sign
this
up with
episode
Jim's
comes out,
affiliate link. No. Oh, okay.
if only. Yeah, I know. I've spent a lot of money there, and they've not enticed me to do so in any way. That's just me.
Wow, what a guy. Is that the
Yep.
Misty
Yep.
Mountain? Is that the Misty Mountains on your mug?
It is. I got the Misty Mountain mug.
Oh, incredible.
I didn't think of calling it that either. I like that a lot. I'm a sucker
I
for
feel like
alliteration.
I feel like I missed my true calling, which is alliteration guy. Alliteration University.
Oh, you know, I just realized, oh, Andrew, that's the Lonely Mountain.
Oh, it's a
And
lonely mountain. Yeah.
if I'm
Misty Mountain's
remembering
not
my
actually on the
geography
mug.
collector, yeah, yeah. Actually, let me double check my full map, which I have hanging right here next to the camera.
It's a map every man has to have. You have to have a map of the known regions of Middle Earth.
Yeah, that's right. Are the Gray Mountains the same as the Misty Mountains? Is that another name for the same range? I forget.
Emmett Mule, Eastboard.
Well, Jim, I feel like you're getting carried away. Like the Misty
No, I
Mountains
gotta
aren't.
figure this
They're
out.
not
All
on your
right,
mug.
all right,
The
fine.
Misty Mountains are not on the mug. It's the Lonely Mountains. Yeah, it's really important though for today's topic.
Yeah, worth spending this much
Yeah,
time on it. That's for sure.
absolutely, absolutely. It's really important for today's topic, which is how to strike in your bagpipes, Jim.
Yeah, which is important, which is an important thing, but it really has nothing to do with mountain ranges, I think. But we'll
No, I
find a
think it
way.
does.
We'll find a
Well,
way to tie this together.
It definitely does. It definitely does.
Yeah.
Something about perseverance and
Here we go. Yeah.
having a plan going in. I feel like Gandalf had a plan going in. It didn't really come together. Bilbo had to kind of be tricked and coerced into going on the
Sure did.
on the burglary run.
Yeah. Yep. He might not have chosen to do that if he hadn't been tricked in a few different ways. Yeah.
Yeah, that sort of reminds me of bagpiping in general, though, not strictly speaking strike-ins.
Yeah. How many of us have been tricked into doing this?
Yeah, I mean, bagpiping is definitely the music world's version of golf.
Elaborate.
In the sense
yeah.
that they trick you into getting involved, and then you become obsessed and you can't stop, even though
Right.
it's a horrible experience. A good walk spoiled. For bagpipes, generally, it's just sort of like a nice weekend spoiled.
Every ounce of spare time that you thought you had is gone now.
Yes, exactly. And emotional energy, too. It's like,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
you can't be a good family man and a piper at the same time. Anyway, speaking of spoiling a good weekend, let's talk about strike-ins.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that
just-
still wasn't good. It was still pretty weak. Pretty weak. I tried.
Well, here's one thing I can tell you, Andrew. It's getting hot right now as we're recording. It's getting hot. This is a hard left turn, by the way, but maybe an idea will occur at some point. But it's getting hot right now. And so yesterday I thought, okay, it's time for the, semi-annual re-hemping. And I didn't go all out and like tear hemp off of my pipes, but I did go through and check each joint and tighten it up a little bit, that kind of thing. And then I thought, while I'm at it, why don't I double check that these reeds are still in a pretty good spot as far as calibration goes? And things had drifted a bit. I did the test where I blew up my bag. I put my finger in the chanter hole and blew up my bag and just squoze, and just to see if everything would shut off at the same time. And it
You
didn't.
squoze?
Yeah.
You squoze? Is that a word?
I squoze. I
Squeezed?
squeezed yes. I like it when stuff like that happens though. Like maybe it is. Hey, like why
it is
didn't
now.
language? Yeah, and if it wasn't, then why didn't it? My daughter made up a word when she was really young. Instead of saying I'm not, she would say I amn't.
Yeah.
The
Well, I feel like
contraction
that's
of am.
common. I feel like
I
that's
think it
I
is,
feel like kids do
But
that. Yeah.
but we never used it in the house. She just intuited like, well, this is how language works. Here's what I want to
It
say,
sounds
and
like
it came
old
out.
English. Yeah. It sounds like old English.
I think it does come out in Irish English sometimes. I saw some video. Somebody mentioned that. I clocked it because of my daughter. But I just, so like some verbs do shift that way. The way that you know that it was past tense is that the vowels change their sound, and so squoze kind of
Well,
makes
it's a
sense.
great
doesn't it?
word. So you squoze. Yeah.
I squozed it. Squozed my bag, and
Yeah.
yeah, some of the reeds shut off before the other ones did. So I was like, all right, time to recalibrate. And so I spent some time doing that. I don't think I'm quite in the sweet spot yet. I'm going to work on it some more today during my lunch break. But it messed up my strike-ins. So like after that, I would go to strike in. At first, I had one tenor drone that wasn't coming in at all, so I opened that up some more. Go to strike in. Then it was way too open. The two tenor drones
Yeah.
did not sound as nice together as I wanted them to. So I'm like hopping on either side of this sweet spot I'm trying to find, and my strike-ins are suffering as a result.
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? Strike-ins are one of those nodes. Strike-ins are a node where theory and reality meet, aren't they? You know, so it's
Yeah.
like, so yeah, theoretically, we want our drones to be like perfectly calibrated, right, Jim? Like our
Yeah,
channel read. Our channel read has this pressure where it sounds the best, sounds idyllic, and then we want our drone reads to shut off. I mean, you probably want them to shut off 2 standard deviations above the blowing pressure mean, which is calibrated perfectly to the sweet spot of the chant read. You know what I mean, Jim?
Yes, I never would have thought to say 2 standard deviations, but that's the perfect description. Yeah, because you want just a little bit of cushion, but not too much. But you want just a little bit for safety. That's such a good way to put it.
Exactly. So the thing with calibration is, if you blew perfectly steady all the time with no exceptions, you might say that we want to calibrate the reeds exactly to the sweet spot, you know, and the sweet spot is just where the pressure that your channel reed sounds the best. So if you were some sort of robot, that's how you might calibrate the reeds, or you could at least start there, but then you got to think, well, I'm not perfectly steady all the time. And
No,
sometimes,
I'm not.
yeah, sometimes I accidentally surge in the blowing a little bit or whatever. And then, you know, and then so like, well, how often do you surge to 1 standard deviation away from the desired? Well, you know, that probably happens fairly often. Like not all the
Yeah.
time, but fairly often. And then you'll see a lot of pipers that are playing. Then when you ask them to get up and play a tune for you, they get just a smidge extra nervous. And then every time they hit a high A or something, one of their drones shuts off, because it's not that they're badly calibrated, but they're calibrated too tightly to the goal pressure, right? And so, yeah, 2 standard deviations. If you picture your standard Gaussian distribution curve, like 2 standard
Of course.
deviations is, yeah, exactly. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh,
Jim?
yeah. You
Yeah,
drew
for
it with your
sure.
finger, so I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bell curve. Well, in the middle of the bell curve, that would be the average. That would be the mean right there. And then a standard deviation is like, I forget the exact math of it, but like 1 standard deviation, that line, like basically the vast majority of stuff is going to fall within 1 standard deviation,
Yeah.
right? And then there's a small group that's going to fall within between 1 and 2 standard deviations, right? And then beyond the second standard deviation, very, very few instances are going to occur, right? So like,
Yeah.
let's say we calibrated our drones to that. That would mean that like, okay, that's going to cover 99% of all of our potential blowing mishaps on the high side.
Makes sense.
This is just a thought experiment. It's not, there's probably no way to find the exact second deviation from the mean or whatever, right?
That feels like what we're going for, though. I mean, of course, I only have the limited experience of my own experience, but like when doing that calibration process, when I've got the read in, I want to be able to squeeze hard on the chanter read, and it does feel like, yeah, it's like about 2 deviations beyond where I actually usually play that I want to see my drone reads shutting
just
off,
like
my chanter read still going.
Yep. And then the other thing to consider is for Stuart Little and Jack Lee and me, I always like to group myself in. Okay.
Yeah,
no.
sure.
But for a super advanced player, your deviations from the mean are going to be far less significant
So much
than a
tighter.
beginner.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So
that makes
it
sense.
would change based on the player. It's not like a specific measurement. Right.
I know my deviations are big, because the other like painful revelation that happened to me yesterday is I thought I'd record myself. I've been practicing P. Brock O'Donnell do, thinking I'll compete with it. I thought, I'll record that, see how I'm doing. And dude, you know how the beginning of it's like do 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 do, that do do do
every time.
my drones do 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 do.
Yeah, what's up with that, Jim? Yeah, you gotta work on that.
It was sobering. I thought I was rock steady. And then hearing it from a recording, I was like, oh my goodness, that was huge movement. So my drone's reads are my 2 standard deviations are big enough to accommodate that.
Yeah. I feel like the most important part of calibration, okay, more important than getting the exact perfect aperture of all the reads, is getting all the drone reads to match, right?
That makes sense. Yeah.
That's
that's the
more
good
important.
sound.
Yeah, it's more important than the perfect aperture. And then also very important is getting the aperture to be ideal. But it's a trial and error thing, and it's you usually can't get it perfect in one session. So you usually get it close in the first session, and then in the second session you fire up your pipes and you're like, damn, one of these reeds pops off on me all the time. Or
Yeah.
perhaps when I overblow, my middle tenor is still going. Like, I thought I did this yesterday, but you can picture the elastic bands on the reeds and they take time to settle. And so, it's something that's going to happen gradually over time.
Realistic expectations are probably good going into this, to not
Yeah.
think I'm going to fix it today. Rather, I'll engage in the process for the next little while.
Yeah, that's right. Engage in the process. And then what you might find is, everything's going great until you play P-Brock or Donald Do. And then whenever you do, 2 of the reeds shut off on you. And that's like, that means your calibration is a little too tight. You gotta open up the aperture of those reeds a little bit. But anyway, moving on a little bit to strike-ins, right? Strike-ins are the same. It's a node where theory meets reality. So another thing that will happen is if you calibrate your reeds perfectly, everything's going great, but then you can't strike in your pipes because your drone reeds don't turn on because, that initial rush of air to the reeds is just shutting them off. It's not allowing them to start. Is this kind of what you were going through after a little calibration?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, a little calibration, a little sesh of calibration, and I started running into that issue. Go to strike in and be like, that doesn't sound quite right. Put a hand up to feel for the air and realize like, oh, my middle tenor just isn't coming in.
That actually reminds me, calibration comes from the Calabria region of the north of England, actually.
I'm here for it. I believe you 100%. Carry on. Tell me more about
It's
this.
a complete lie. It's a complete lie. I feel like calibration, it sounded like a place, and so I was trying to make a place joke.
Yeah.
Nope.
It does.
doesn't.
Yeah, calibration.
It doesn't
the
come from
Kingdom
that.
of
It doesn't
Serendip.
come from the Calabria region, though. It doesn't. That's just made
Darn
up.
it.
It might be in Middle Earth somewhere, but it's not a real place on regular.
Oh, let me check my other map over here.
No, Jim, we got to stay focused. Okay, so anyway, so sometimes you calibrate nice and then you can't strike in your pipes anymore. Therefore, have you calibrated successfully? No, not really.
No.
Right? And maybe you need to fix your strike in technique, which we'll talk about a little bit today. But like, if you cannot strike in and the drones actually turn on, then your calibration was not successful. I think this is something that people misunderstand. They become too idealistic about the theory of calibration, and then we miss the forest for the trees in terms of the reality of it. We need maximum efficiency, really, is what we need out of our drone reads. And then what's the definition of efficiency? As far as I can tell, it would be something along the lines of, minimizing the input to maximization of output, right? So we want to find the best ratio of input to output. That's what efficiency is.
That makes sense. I took an energy class a little while ago, like a class about how energy works. I mean, I say a little while ago, more than 10 years ago.
Yeah, I know, right?
And a thing that stood out to me that comes to mind here is the professor was saying, like, what's the most efficient use of, we're talking about like old mill wheels that would sit in rivers, and would do work, turn grinding stones and stuff like that. It's like, what is like the most efficient use of water to produce energy from a system like this? It would be, and the answer is, it would be one drop at a time. So if you could let one individual drop hit the paddles to move the paddles, that would be the most efficient use of water. But that's not enough force to generate energy because of the physical friction and stuff like that the system has in it. And so if your goal is to do work and you're not achieving the work, then this actually doesn't matter. And so just, in this case, it's like, if your goal is for your bagpipes to make sound and you maximize the efficiency of that aperture on your reed so that it takes the minimum amount of air, but that makes it so you can't strike in and play, well, then your results are null. It doesn't matter. You got to actually be able to do the thing.
Yep, exactly. By the way, just something that comes to mind is the opposite can be true as well with cane drone reeds. Like cane drone reeds, like especially for me, I live in a much drier climate than Scotland. So when I prepare for the band, I'm getting the cane going. But like for me, my cane will not go in the beginning of the playing session. It just doesn't go. It's too shut. It needs moisture and so on to open up the cane. The problem is now if I open up the cane so that they'll work at the beginning of my practice session, what's the result 10 to 15 minutes later? The result is
way
that
too
the reeds
open.
have gone like that. And you know, and that's going to be a disaster. So when I play at home, the first 5 to 10 minutes of playing, let's call it 5. It's usually fine after about 5 minutes, but it's usually drone reeds are shutting off all over the place and they're not behaving correctly yet. But you just leave them and you play, you know, you also can't play too long with them clamped shut either. I feel like that's bad.
Sure.
So I'm usually stopping and starting a lot and often just feeding some air into the bag and you know, various things to try and get the moisture into the reeds to open them up a little bit. Because if I monkey with them, I pay the price. The first band practice when I get to Scotland, like the whole system just opens up like crazy. If you show up with reeds that are perfect for North America in Scotland, it could be a disaster. And what I've started to do is just, you know, grin and bear it as opposed to like always fidgeting. Anyway, efficiency is the name of the game there. Like that's what we're talking about. And it goes both ways. As humans, we have a fantastic instinct for understanding these concepts and applying them naturally in our day-to-day lives. Like for example, do you walk? Do you run or do you crawl when you want to, I don't know, go to your friend's house? I don't know.
Right.
Or go to the grocery store or something, or go to the corner store. Would you walk? Would you crawl? Or would you run? And most people would choose what? It's obvious.
You'd walk. Yeah.
Yeah. Now running would get you there faster. If it was an emergency, which one would you choose?
Yeah.
Running.
Then you'd run. Sure.
Right. But that's an efficiency calculation, I think. Right. So it's like walking takes far longer than running, but it puts you in the position to continue with your day once you've achieved that goal, right? So like that's a good reality-based efficiency calculation, and we have to do the same with our pipes. We have to set our drones so that they can strike in. Now, with all that said, strike-in technique is something that is seldom done well. And it takes pipers a long time to figure out, and it's actually pretty rare that it's done well. So
it's still kind of mysterious to me, Andrew. Like I feel like having played my set of pipes with these exact reeds for a very long time, I've got to where like I'm very comfortable striking in my own set of pipes.
Yeah.
Hand me any other pipes. I know it's going to take a while of like, okay, do I blow and hit at the same time? Do I hit from down here? Do I hit from over there? Do I get it kind of full and not blow and just tap it as I'm bringing it in? You're like, there's so many variables for what you might do to get the strike in to happen. I don't even know. You tell me, is there a way to standardize this, or is this going to be unique for every person to their bagpipe?
I think that there is a good responsible process for this. I don't know about standardization. I think you're right. I feel like there's so many variables with every set of pipes that there's not going to be one way to do it. But I have developed my own personal set of guidelines over the years. And at one point I codified it here at the dojo, but there's other additions to this as well. But yeah, we did this star strike-in thing. I think it would have been, wow, this would have been 10 years ago too, Jim.
Really?
Because I remember I was still playing with Stuart Highlanders at the time. So this is 10 years ago. That is bananas. That can't be right. I think it's right though.
Here it is. This PDF, though the years have rolled over its head, still standing.
I think the PDF has seen a facelift in the 10 years. But anyway, I don't know. You want to pick through this and see what we get?
Yeah, let's look at it. It does seem to me like we've spent some time talking about reed calibration, and I feel like that, of course, that's part of setup. It's not the only thing to do with setup, but it does seem like that's pretty key. I mean, I've had a few students I can think of where like they're trying to strike in, and as I come to examine the pipes, try to figure out what's wrong, it's like, oh, we're leaking air like crazy, you know, like let's give you a chance, you know.
Yeah.
This is hard enough as it is.
So you're talking about the first category, right?
Setup. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like before we even start talking about how you're going to tap the bag, let's get the bag tight.
Yeah. So what I did here is,
Airtight, I mean.
yeah, what I did here when I was thinking about this is I ended up with sort of 4 categories of things that you want to think about when you are when you're talking about striking technique. And the first one is the setup of the pipes. Basically, not a day goes by where the 4 questions of bagpipe maintenance don't play a big role in the success or failure of my session, right? So that's one of the first things here. And so we're talking about, is the bag airtight? Are the joints airtight? Are my reed seats airtight? If you have a loose reed seat, is that going to have a positive or negative effect on your odds for a good strike-in? It's going to
I
negatively,
would
like,
think negative. Yeah.
it's hard to know exactly what might happen, and maybe you'll be fine, but like an airtight reed seat, by the way, where the reeds are actually straight, pointing in the direction of the air, and like things aren't crooked, that probably helps too. So those basic bagpipe maintenance questions we discussed. And then the 4th question, of course, is, are the drone reeds well calibrated? And we've already spent quite a bit of time talking about what well calibrated actually might mean, right? We're not talking about perfectly calibrated theoretically. We're talking about well calibrated in the real world, and the drone reeds are set up and operating well. One of the things that I learned in the SFU pipe band from I think it was Jack Lee, right? One of the things I learned, which by the way, not everyone universally agrees with this, but for me, it's been an absolute game changer, is that the lower the bass drone tunes on the pin, and I'm talking about the first one, not the up high one. The
As
first
in,
bass
the
drone
smaller
pin.
that gap is, right?
That's right. So the
'Cause
closer
it's always
they,
confusing because we say lower, but of course that makes the pitch go higher. So just to be really
No.
clear.
yes, exactly. So the smaller the gap between the drone and the projecting mount, you could say. I could actually get a set of pipes out, but I'm
I
lazy.
gotcha.
I'm not doing it. Jim, hook us up.
I only have
It's
2
just-
sets hanging within arm's reach here. So,
Okay. Slacking. Yeah, there you go, Jim.
the
So that's
smaller
way
the-
too
this is
high. Like
really
that makes,
big.
that gives me the vomit reflex right there. By the way, and you know, there's another thing we should discuss too.
Really tight.
Yeah, that's so tight that you
But
can't
that's too
even get
big.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's too
like
big.
one finger is a good amount. Like hold up one finger. So that's almost twice as high, if not more than twice as high, as would be good. Yeah. And can you start your pipes with the bass drone higher on the pin? Of course. And then, by the way, there's also the well-known theory out there that the higher it tunes on the pin, right? If you can get that tuning right around the hemp line, that's going to maximize the quality of the sound, which may or may not actually be true. I don't know, but like there might be situations where we don't want that. Let me give you an example. If I'm playing the solos, does it matter if my bass drone double tones when I strike in? Nah. As long as you can eventually get the pipes up, like you're not worried about an absolute perfect strike in. And if it slightly double tones, you're not going to be disqualified or anything, or get marked down by the judges. No one cares how you strike in your pipes when you're solo competing. So when the solo is a higher bass drone joint, that makes a lot of sense to me. But in the band, you know, the lower it tunes on the pin, the better it's going to start. By the way,
And that
it's
was
just a fact.
so new to me when I just barely was trying to set that up yesterday because
Yep.
I had no idea of this until having looked at this PDF and going through the course on Dojo U. And
That's the first thing.
I believe
that's
you.
That's the first
try
thing
it.
I would try. So if you have a student, or if you yourself are having trouble with your bass drone striking in, if you're, you know, if that tuning pin is too exposed, right? Or, you know, I don't know, trying to figure out a way of saying that. But like if your
There's too
tuning
much pin showing.
if there's too much pin showing, that's the first thing I would change. Bam.
Hmm.
Because then you'll be able to strike in and you'll be like, what the heck? And
Now,
then we go from there.
If I have a bass drone that's set up with the joints both at approximately the hemp line, would you address the pitch correction by messing with the tuning pin at the reed or with the other joint, or a mix of the two?
Yeah. Well, there's a whole bunch of stuff you could try. But yes, so like the top joint of the bass drone, the top pin, I would, crank that up basically as high as you're comfortable with for starters. And then the other drone, or the other pin rather, would then be lower. So that's one thing you could do. The other thing you could do is get a lower pitched bass drone reed, right? Like a lot of synthetic makers sell a low pitched reed, which is just basically a longer version of the same reed. Highly recommend trying that. also you can crank the tuning pin on the reeds as far out as they'll go as well.
There's a couple examples of the tuning pins. So you could make this gap bigger
Yep.
in order to make up for having made the tuning pin gap on your bass drone smaller.
And the other thing that we should mention is that the tighter the aperture is on the reed, so the more you close the aperture of the reed with the bridle, what effect does that have on where it tunes on the pin?
Smaller aperture goes up in pitch.
Exactly. So one of the problems that you'll often find is, see if you can follow me on this one. You're calibrating your reeds, you calibrate your bass drone. So now it's taking the appropriate amount of air. But by doing that, you're now forcing it to tune much higher on the pin than it did before.
Yeah.
And now because you're higher on the pin, your bass drone won't start as well anymore.
I see. So like I might want to, if I'm taking this band further this direction, closing this aperture, I might want to just go ahead and take this pin out a little bit.
Yeah,
so that
definitely.
it can handle.
I would do it by default.
Yeah.
Yep.
Then it's
take
kind of
that
like
pin
a
out all the way by
self-contained
default.
fix.
Well, maybe, hopefully, like that's what you hope. Well, like I play a Canared bass. I love it. It's great. Just the good old fashioned one, like the old school Canared bass. But like I remember in the SFU days when we played the Canards, step one on the bass drum reed was you take the screw inside the nose cone completely out. So it would be as low, as low pitched as it would get. And that you would do that before you even put the reed in, but you just take that screw out.
It's interesting. I wonder if some kind of engineer could tell us if that, because I wonder if it just makes sense to like in the reed, like your environment is, everything is smaller. And so having something all the way out is, it's only a little bit of a movement, a little bit of a difference. But in your drone, your huge drone, the environment is bigger. And so those adjustments, are inches instead of millimeters. So I wonder if there's a reason why there's more stability with the long tube being shortened,
I can conjecture on the reason. The reason has something to do with that joint is where the node is of the actual physical vibrations and harmonics that interplay. Kind of like on a guitar, right? How exactly halfway up the string is where you would mute it to try and get that first harmonic out of the string. It would be the same with the bass. And so like if the airflow and the shape of that air, I'm wildly conjecturing right now, speculating.
Let's BS together. Yeah.
But if the air shape isn't right, you get like a weird backflow. And when you get a double toning bass, it's essentially the sound of the bass drone absent the fundamental.
My goodness. Yeah. That first joint is like right about the middle of the drone.
Yeah.
And you
got it now.
Yeah.
I don't know about the listener.
It's like you're getting the harmonic out of a string. I see what you mean. It's getting the next vibration.
Yeah. So when a bass double tones, when a bass double tones, you're getting almost a perfect octave above.
That's why
what you're expecting.
It sounds like it never quite matches your tenor drones, but it's always really close.
Well, it's painfully dissonant because it's close but not close.
Because it's so close. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
But it's almost exactly an octave higher when the bass double tones. Yeah. By the way, your tenor drones double tone as well. It sounds, it's got that squeaky, howling tenor kind of thing. But the difference between the tenor and the bass is that typically a tenor that double tones will clear once your pipes are fully struck in. It usually clicks back in down and gives us the fundamental, but the bass will never clear. That's why a double toning bass is bad.
By the way, Andrew, because you bring that up, before we move on to the technique portion of the Star perfect pipe band style strike in method here, I am curious about why is it called the perfect pipe band style strike in? Because speaking of tenor drones squawking and stuff and then coming in, like, I love that sound when the strike in is chaos until the chanter snaps in and then it all comes together. It's like, what?
That's not what we're talking about. You don't like it if it's a super squealy, screechy sound. No, you like the.
Well, not if it keeps going.
Yeah, you like the low growly sound. We all like that.
I mean, I like to be in pain and then be relieved when everything snaps together. The greater the difference between the two is great.
But there's a very specific like thing that we like. And what I'm talking about is the high pitched squeals, which we typically want to avoid when we're striking in. It's called a pipe
Gotcha.
band style. And by the way, a pipe band style attack still has that in there. I think what makes it a pipe band style attack is the rhythm of it. Okay. And it all has to be synchronized and in unison, and it has to go well. And there's no chance to restrike, right? In the pipe band style attack. Like, stopping the pipes would be really bad. So pipe band style attack is much more rigid and I don't know, do or die. And
One
then
chance.
meanwhile, other types of strike-ins, like if you're just striking in for your solo set or something, yeah, we want to get the pipes struck in, and we want to do that somewhat elegantly, but it's not a do or die situation that has to be done in unison with others and so on.
Yeah, though of course it might still make an impression, and even if the judge tries not to think about it, a good strike-in might still do you favors in soloing. So it's probably worth thinking about, right?
No, it's not really worth thinking about that much.
Oh, all right.
But
fine.
no, I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
So we want our instrument set up right in the first place, so that
Yeah,
then
I think
we
we've
can
talked
work
enough
on
about
it.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we've talked enough about the setup.
Yeah.
No, we haven't. One more thing about the setup
Mhm.
that we have to mention. Okay. If you have a floppy pipe bag, the floppier the pipe bag is, like your strike-in becomes exponentially more and more difficult to do.
Are you talking like synthetic versus hide kind of floppy,
Yeah.
like thin wall
Right.
grocery bag feel?
Yes, exactly. The more your bag feels like a grocery bag, the harder it's going to be to strike in your pipes. Now, it's not to say it's impossible to do. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it's way harder. If you're a beginner, one of the things you really, really should do is not strap on a floppy bag. They sell synthetic bags now that have a really nice, thick, rigid feel to them. So that's what a beginner should get, not the super floppy synthetic ones. And the reason for that is there's nothing wrong with the super floppy ones at all, except that developing good strike-in technique is really, really way, 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 way harder than when you have a more rigid bag.
That checks out. Yeah.
So the final thing with the setup is don't play a floppy bag. Now, can it be done? It can definitely be done. But like I'm picturing some of these top soloists that just have a good old fashioned floppy synthetic bag and they strike in their pipes no problem. But it's like those guys are 10 million time former winners of at Oban and Inverness. You're like, yeah, of course they can strike that in. But we're talking about beginners and developing players and people who are trying to put together a good band in grade 5 or 4. Like, make sure everyone has a rigid style bag. Not no super floppy bags, because that's going to be a big problem. I feel like those are kind of like you're trying to hold Jello in your hands with no bowl. That's kind of what it feels like can it be done? Sure. But like, why? Just get a bowl. How about that for a terrible analogy that was just obviously lame analogy.
I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think any of us, if we've tried those floppy bags, the first experience, whether you're experienced or not as a piper, the first time you try it, that's the feeling. It's like you got nothing to hold on to until it's completely inflated. But of course, by then it's too late for your strike-in. You've already like mumbled your way through a strike-in to get to that point. So
yeah. It's also like, I don't know. I feel like it's harder to get a good opening E as well with a floppy bag. It's hard to just come in at the right pitch. I don't know. But anyway, don't be floppy. Jim, let's pause there. And in part 2 of this discussion, let's talk about the other 3 aspects of a star.
That sounds like a good plan.
Technique, air pressure, and rhythm coming up in the next segment of this discussion. What do you think about that?
Perfect.
Hey everybody, Andrew Douglas here from the Piper's Dojo, and I just want to say thanks so much for listening to today's iteration of the podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard here today, it would be super helpful to us and to a lot of bagpipers out there trying to find us if you could give us a top-notch review on whatever platform you're using to listen to this podcast, particularly Apple, iTunes, and Spotify and things like that. Your review would be really, really helpful. So if you have a moment today, definitely go over there and help us out. Other than that, until we meet again on the podcast or somewhere else, thanks again for listening.